Chapter 3. The Offices of the Story Bureau. And there's a very great picture of a witch on a broomstick. Deeper, in among the wintry trees, a long way through the woods from young Tom and his mother and his brothers, were the head offices of the fabled Story Bureau. It was an ancient and secret set of buildings. On top of the highest of its sloping grey-shingled roofs was a clock, and on top of that was an iron weather vane in the shape of a witch with her cat riding on her broom. Near the weather vane was a carved owl. The owl clutched a quill pen in its talons. It presided over the Story Bureau and the Guild of Stories as its wise and brooding mascot. Brother Jane Ormstone, a senior story deviser, glanced up at the clock above his desk. He was going to be late for the meeting yet again. He rose at once like an icy whisper to his feet. He climbed the spiral staircase all the way up to the high-story conference room. By the time he opened the oak doors to be greeted by a sea of disapproving faces, his brother scribes, artists, planners, and accountants, he was indeed seriously late. "I am very sorry, master," he whispered, and as he spoke, the temperature grew noticeably colder. "I was so busy with everything that I'm afraid I lost track of time." "Well, never mind all that now, I am sure that as ever you are most welcome, Brother Ormstone," the master replied with a kindly smile. The morning passed as Ormstone outlined his latest story plans, which he had polished over the last few weeks. "If I may, master," said Brother Ormstone, "I have been completely redrafting the ideas for the story which we discussed at our last meeting, The Adventure of the Fair Princess Snow White and the 17 Dwarfs. During the second half of the story, by allowing the young Snow White to escape the hunter and his knife, she can then be found in the woods and sheltered by the 17 Dwarfs, or she could even find them in her panic to escape. We will use the northeastern area, the deep woods in the mountains. If our brother treasurer could supply a nicely turned out bright cottage, able to house 18, well hidden away for them all to live in." "The cottage will not be a problem. There are several we can dress ready," said the treasurer, a severe bearded man in grey who sat at the other end of the table. "The 17 dwarfs, now that is your problem. I can supply a maximum of 7 for any story." "7?" said Brother Ormstone in his most chilling voice. "7? Dear me, no. I have worked long and hard on this story, and it definitely involves 17 dwarfs of varied and, I am afraid, somewhat twisted character." He emphasized the word twisted in such a way that it caused Master's skin to crawl, and then Brother Ormstone laughed rather too loudly, which then showed his long yellowed teeth. "Pie in the sky, Brother Ormstone, it would be far too expensive to mount with that number," said the treasurer. "Too many to draw anyway. I couldn't fit them all in one page," said a scruffy little brother artist who sat next to the treasurer. "In any case, Ormstone, we have heard enough for now. You have, as usual lately, gone too far in the planning of these stories," said the master, shaking his head. "There is nothing left for the adventurers to actually do. Your story plans have got longer and longer. It is almost as if you are trying to get rid of the adventurer's role altogether. You know the rules as well as the rest of us. We suggest the beginning of things only. We set things up for the adventurers, and they carry out the adventure. It is not up to us to wrap it all up for them and tie a ribbon around it with our name on it." Brother Ormstone sat down, full of hatred and embarrassment. It was all too a familiar story these days, his gradual and complete humiliation. A mere scribe looked over at him from the other side of the conference table and shook his head in pity. "Pity? From a scribe?" Brother Ormstone made a loud and sudden crackle as he clenched his bony fingers angrily on his sheaf of loose papers. "Exactly so," said the treasurer, looking hard at Brother Ormstone, and he simply repeated, 7 maximum. Now, Brother Ormstone dragged himself reluctantly back to his dark, spider-webbed office. He seethed with anger. As usual, he had been overruled, and as usual, those frauds, the Truehearts, would be sent on adventures devised by real geniuses like himself. He would finish the story so much better than they could. Truly, there was no justice in the land of stories. If there were, he himself would be sent out to enact these stories. He would rescue the princess. He would defeat the wolf. He would wear the crown. He had been humiliated once again, and once again the wretched Trueheart family would get the glory. Well now, Julius Ormstone had had enough. He would show them, he would show them all. He had been ridiculed and rejected once too often, and brother J. Ormstone, story deviser, would soon have his vengeance on the Trueheart family. During the tedium of that story planning meeting, a huge and evil plan had grown quite suddenly inside his very twisted, very clever, and horribly inventive head. I think Brother J. Ormstone may be our villain. What do you think? See me again for Chapter 4.